It was the last time her father would hear her voice. She called back to him from the kitchen, said she would have the plate ready directly. Then came the sound of the screen door, then the soft crunch of gravel underfoot, then silence. By the time he crossed the yard, she was lying in a ditch beside the road, a cord buried so deep in her throat that he could not see it at first. What had come to the Hackett farm on the evening of the 17th of August, in 1905? Hello everyone. Before we start, make sure to like and subscribe to the channel and leave a comment with where you are from and what time you are watching. Your support helps us bring you more stories like this. Now, let us begin. It was Thursday, the 17th of August, 1905, in the town of Reed Field, in Kennebec County, in the state of Maine. Summer had held long that year, and by early evening the heat had not yet broken. The fields around the Hackett property still shimmered at the edges, and the smell of dry grass and turned earth drifted in through the open kitchen windows. It was the kind of evening that invited stillness. On the family farm at the edge of Reed Field, Levi Hackett had spent the day as he spent most days, working the land, tending his stock, and taking quiet satisfaction in the modest order of his household. He was a man of plain habit and steady temperament, and his family were known throughout the community as honest, industrious, and kind. His daughter Martha, called Mattie by all who knew her, was 20 years of age that summer. She was regarded as a pleasant and capable young woman, liked by customers and colleagues wherever she had worked, and engaged to be married to a gentleman in the city of Boston. Her appendix needed to be removed before the wedding could take place. It was a routine matter. Nothing more was expected to come of it. What came to the Hackett farm that evening would outlast the summer and outlast the century. Mattie Hackett had been born on the 29th of January, 1888, in the small town of Crystal, in Aroostook County. She was the second eldest daughter of Levi Hackett, and as a girl she had moved with her family southward to Reed Field, where her father worked the land and her mother kept the house. She had attended primary school with diligence and went on to study at the Maine Wesleyan Seminary, a school of some standing only a few miles from the family home. She left her studies before completing them and found employment in a shop, where her easy manner and willingness to work earned her a good reputation. Later she had taken a position as a waitress at the Elmwood Hotel in Reed Field, and it was said by those who knew her there that she was kind-hearted and friendly, and that she was well liked by guests and staff alike. She was known for her beauty. This was remarked upon often, and without malice, by those who were later called upon to speak of her. By the summer of 1905, she had been staying with an aunt in the nearby town of Bartlett, working in a store there. She had recently returned home, however, on account of her health. The operation on her appendix had been scheduled, and in the meantime she was back at the family farm, helping where she could, resting when she was bid to. On the afternoon of the 17th, the family sat together at the dinner table as the sun began to descend toward the tree line. The meal was a plain one, as most meals were on the farm, and the talk was easy. When dinner was concluded, Levi Hackett excused himself and went out to tend to the last chores of the day, and the other members of the family soon departed to visit neighbors nearby. Mattie remained alone in the kitchen, washing the dishes one by one at the sink, the warm glow of late summer settling over the room. It was then that a stranger came to the gate. He was a stout, poorly dressed young man who introduced himself to Levi Hackett as Mr. Alfred Johnson. He said he was from the town of Caribou and had recently been released from prison after serving a term for vagrancy, and he asked if he might have some food and a corner of the barn to sleep in for the night before continuing his journey. Levi Hackett, a man not given to turning away the needy, said that he was welcome to both. He then walked to the house and called through to Mattie, asking her to prepare a plate of food for their unexpected guest. She gladly obliged. It was not the first time her father had made such a request. While his daughter prepared the food, dull Levi Hackett returned to the barn and sat with Alfred Johnson, passing the time in polite conversation. The two men had not spoken long when they became aware of a commotion rising from the direction of the road. It was an indistinct sound at first, raised voices perhaps, or the quick movement of feet on gravel. Johnson made to rise and investigate, but Hackett quieted his concern. It would be the neighbours' children, he said. It was the sort of noise children made in the long evenings of summer. Then the quality of the sound changed. From the road came a woman's scream. It was not the cry of a startled child or the shriek of play carried too far. It carried a pitch and a quality that caused Levi Hackett to rise from where he sat. It was followed by words, shouted in anger or distress, which both men would later repeat to investigators. "Oh, you dirty, nasty thing." Hackett ran to the kitchen at once, and his daughter was not there. The dishes sat unfinished at the sink. The room was undisturbed, the plate of food she had been preparing still on the table. He called her name. No answer came. He went to the road. She was lying in a ditch beside a culvert, not far from the gate. She was unconscious. Her forehead had been cut. He shouted for help, and within minutes the neighbours had gathered, and together they carried her back to the house and laid her down and tried everything they knew to revive her. They loosened her clothing. They rubbed her hands and her feet. They applied cold water to her face. Her breathing grew worse. When Hackett lifted her to carry her to her room, he felt something at her throat. It was a cord, thin and tightly wound, buried so deep in the flesh of her neck that it had not been visible in the dim light outside. He tried to remove it, but could not. He knew in that moment what it signified. The doctor was sent for, but by the time he arrived, Mattie Hackett was dead. She was 17 years old. The evening had been quiet until it was not. The constabulary was notified before the night was through. Officers arrived at the Hackett farm and examined the scene with what care the hour allowed. The kitchen showed no sign of disturbance. Nothing had been overturned, nothing taken. The plate of food sat where Mattie had left it. The washing up had been interrupted mid-task, the cloth still damp beside the basin. All of it suggested that she had gone willingly out of the house or had been drawn out quietly, without alarm. Had there been a struggle inside, Levi Hackett, working only a short distance away in the barn, would surely have heard it. The ditch where she had been found was examined in the early morning light. Footprints were identified near the culvert and noted in the official record, and items in the immediate vicinity were catalogued. The cord that had been removed from Mattie's throat was preserved as evidence. The body was examined that evening by the attending physician, who confirmed death by strangulation and reported his findings to the authorities. Alfred Johnson was taken into custody, not as a suspect in the murder itself, but as a material witness. The investigators did not wish him to continue his journey before he had given a full account of what he had seen and heard. He was held at the county jail while inquiries continued. The community of Reed Field received the news of the girl's death with the kind of quiet shock that attends a crime of this nature in a small town. She had been known to a great many people. She had worked at the Elmwood Hotel, at the store in Bartlett, and at shops in the town itself. She had been pleasant and capable, and had caused no offence to anyone of record. The question asked in every household was the same: who had done it, and why? Investigators began with the assumption that it was not a stranger. The kitchen undisturbed, the absence of any struggle, the short distance from the house to the ditch. All of it pointed to someone known to the girl, or at least not feared by her. By the following morning, a theory was beginning to take shape. The post-mortem examination was conducted promptly and its findings recorded in formal terms. The examining physician determined that death had been caused by manual strangulation effected by means of a ligature, a thin cord, wound with considerable force and deliberately tightened. The depth to which the cord had been embedded in the flesh indicated that it had been applied with sustained pressure, and that the victim had been rendered insensible before she was placed or fell into the ditch. The cut to her forehead was noted separately, consistent with a fall against the culvert's edge during or after the assault. Investigators turned their attention to a young woman named Mrs. Elsie Hobbs Raymond, the 21-year-old wife of a local hostler named Bert Raymond. She was originally from the town of Turner, some 17 miles distant, and had come to Reed Field when she took a position at the Elmwood Hotel. It was there that she had met and married her husband. Mattie Hackett had also worked at the hotel, and investigators gathered reports suggesting that Bert Raymond had paid the young woman undue attention, that the two had been seen together in a horse and cart on more than one occasion. At the time of Mattie Hackett's death, Elsie Hobbs Raymond was 8 months with child. A witness named Miss Milliken, who shared lodgings with the Raymonds, stated that on the evening of the 17th, Mrs. Raymond had left the house early and had not returned until well past midnight, visibly distressed and in tears. Other witnesses reported having seen a veiled woman walking in the direction of the Hackett farm in the hour before the attack. A witness named Mrs. Swan, resident of Lewiston, would later come forward with a statement of a more direct and disturbing character. The footprints found near the culvert were measured and recorded. They corresponded to a size 7 shoe. If you are finding this case as compelling as we are, please take a moment to like this video and subscribe to our channel. It truly helps us continue researching and sharing these forgotten stories from history. We also read every comment, so let us know your thoughts on this case below. Now, let us continue. On the strength of the evidence gathered over the preceding weeks, investigators confirmed to the press in early 1906 that they had eliminated all but one suspect from their inquiries. That suspect was Mrs. Elsie Hobbs Raymond. However, County Attorney Joseph Williamson determined that there was not yet sufficient evidence to place the matter before a grand jury. Mrs. Raymond, when asked her opinion of this decision by a reporter from the local press in January of 1906, replied that they knew she was innocent, and that was why they did not act. For nearly 7 years, the death of Mattie Hackett remained an open question in Kennebec County. Life continued in Reed Field. The Raymonds remained in the community. The case was discussed, and then less discussed, and then spoken of only when some minor occasion brought it to the surface, or Alfred Johnson had been released from custody and passed out of the record entirely. Then, in March of 1912, County Attorney Joseph Williamson secured a new indictment against Mrs. Elsie Hobbs Raymond. She was arrested and held at the Kennebec County Jail to await trial. The trial commenced in November of 1912 at Augusta, the state capital of Maine. It was presided over by Chief Justice Whitehouse. The proceedings attracted considerable attention across the state, and the name of Mattie Hackett was once again read aloud in print and spoken in parlors from Reed Field to Portland. The prosecution advanced a theory of some legal novelty. It was argued that Mrs. Raymond's advanced pregnancy had produced in her a temporary derangement of the mind, a condition, medical witnesses testified, that was known to afflict women in the final weeks of their confinement, and that typically resolved itself following the birth of the child. On this basis, a plea of not guilty by reason of temporary insanity was offered to the defense as a means of resolution. The defense rejected it entirely. Their client was innocent, they said, and had been so from the beginning. They pointed to the footprints. The impressions found near the culvert corresponded to a size 7 shoe. Mrs. Raymond wore a size 4.5. They called attention to the witnesses, who had seen a veiled woman walking toward the Hackett farm. 2 men, a Mr. Davis and a Mr. Williams, and whose carriage had passed her on the road, said they had seen her face clearly and had not recognized her as anyone who lived in Reed Field. They introduced testimony from the mother and sister of a man named William Hurds, an army deserter who had since died by his own hand. He had, they said, confided to them that he and 2 fellow vagrants had committed the assault on Miss Hackett on the 17th of August, 1905. The Mrs. Swan of Lewiston took the stand for the prosecution and told the court that she had heard Elsie Hobbs Raymond say of Mattie Hackett, "If she ever crosses my path, I will kill her." After 2.5 hours of deliberation, the jury returned a verdict of not guilty. The gallery received it with loud and sustained applause. Mrs. Raymond wept. The verdict was reported in the newspapers with varying degrees of satisfaction. The Kennebec Journal carried the account in full. In some quarters, the acquittal was greeted as the proper conclusion to a prosecution built on circumstance and inference. In others, it was received with the particular unease that attends a case in which guilt and innocence have been publicly debated for the better part of a decade without resolution. Mrs. Elsie Hobbs Raymond emerged from the Kennebec County Courthouse on the arm of her husband. She spoke briefly to those assembled outside, saying that she had been confident of her innocence throughout, that she had expected acquittal, and that she had never at any moment doubted the verdict that would be returned. She and Bert Raymond, she said, could now live their lives in peace. The reporters wrote it down, and it went into the afternoon edition. Joseph Williamson, who had pursued the case for 7 years with the conviction that he had identified the guilty party, made no public statement that day. The boy born to Elsie Hobbs Raymond on the 6th of September, 1905, 3 weeks after the death of Mattie Hackett, grew up in Reed Field. His name was not recorded in any account of the case that has survived. William Hurds, the Army deserter whose deathbed confession had provided the defense with its most compelling alternative narrative, had never named the 2 companions he claimed to have acted with. His admission had first appeared in the Lewiston Journal in the weeks immediately following the murder, and had been noted and set aside by investigators who could find no supporting evidence. The neighbours of Reed Field had ridden out on the night of the 17th and the morning of the 18th, searching for strangers in the area. They had found no one. Alfred Johnson's final testimony, that he had heard a man asking a woman if she could come down that night, and the woman refusing, and then 2 women talking, and then the cry and the stifled scream, differed in material particulars from his earlier statements. The record does not indicate that this discrepancy was ever satisfactorily explained. Mattie Hackett was buried in Reed Field. She had been 20 years of age. She had been engaged to be married. She had worked hard and been kind to those around her, and had said to 2 colleagues in a shop in Bartlett that she was afraid of a man back home, a man she had known, or who had married someone else. She had not given them his name. The case was never closed. The file remains in the record, and if it has gathered anything in the years since, it is only silence.